Pleased to be with you today. The past year has been filled with a lot of changes around where we've been working and how we've been working. And the fiscal year to come represents another set of changes because our current lease at 8915 David Taylor Drive comes up for renewal. And we have the option to remain or we can look for additional space elsewhere. So I just want to take you through a few slides with background information and then turn it over to our partners at Cushman and Wakefield who we're using to assist us with this office search. Kelly, can you go to the next slide? So our objectives in thinking about our office space are really quite simple and clear. One, to create a great place to work. I would love an environment where our employees are excited to come to work, that the space is dynamic and interesting and offers a great environment to do the great work that they do every day. We also host a lot of meetings. We engage you all as board members and are a hub of activity and information for the region. So it's really important to us that our office space creates a welcoming environment for our employees and clients and stakeholders. And last but certainly not least, we need to make sure we have a cost-effective solution that will be beneficial to the organization in the long term. We are taking a hard look at how much space we need so that we can be efficient, and also taking advantage of the good track record we've had from working from home over the last year, and wanting to continue to give employees the flexibility to do that, and that might have some implications on how much space we need as well. So those are our objectives. Just want to give you a little bit of timeline now. Kelly, can you go to the next slide? And also, if you're not speaking, if you could just mute yourself to reduce the background noise, we'd appreciate it. So we've been engaged in this work for about the last 6 months. We have worked with Cushman and Wakefield over the past, I believe, 2 moves. Keith Bell, who is our collaborator and agent, is on the line, and he'll be speaking with you in just a moment. But he's moved Centralina, I think, to the last 2 locations. So he has a long history with the organization, and it just made sense for us to work with them again. Our other early moves that we've made are just to confirm the amount of space that we needed for both current operations and also for growth. And then headed into the spring, we looked at what was available in our immediate area. The decision was made early on not to move outside of the University Research Park area. It's an affordable market for us. It's conveniently located, and there's lots of choices. So we are just trying to stay in a relative proximity to our current location. So we toured some sites, we narrowed the list down, and we've been going through the process now of getting responses back from those building owners and an initial impression of what they would offer us. And then now we're in the process of kind of briefing all of you to get your input, and then we'll move into more negotiations this summer. So I'll cover those next steps in just a moment. But now I'd like to just quickly show a map of the locations. Kelly, can you go to the next slide? So we are, as mentioned before, we do have the option to stay. So our current location is very much on the table, and you can see the 4 other locations in the university area that we're considering. And now I'm going to turn it over to Keith and his colleague Piers to tell us a little bit about the current office market and dive into some of the details of these spaces and how we're proceeding with this project. So Keith, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction. First, a couple things. I have been quite involved with the organization for a long time, from Baxter Street to Uptown to the university. So thank you for your continued trust in that. A little background on me and Piers, my partner. We work as a team. We work with only users and occupiers of space, so there's never going to be a conflict of interest where we're bringing you to a building that we represent. We only work with the tenants and users of space, so we only work on your side. Another aspect to point out right now, there's no fee or cost to Centralina for our services. So today there's been no out-of-pocket cost for that, and wherever you end up going, the certain building will pay us a certain commission, so everybody understands how the cost association works. So we're completely working, following the directions of your leadership and your board. That's who we're working for, and doing everything in our fiduciary duty to bring you the best deal. So if we can go to the next slide real quick. This is a general overview of the Charlotte market. As you all can aware, I mean, coming out of COVID, things have really been very, very high for Charlotte, the Charlotte market. It's a very growth spot from a lot of people in different markets, different areas of the country, especially from Northeast and in California. As you probably are aware, Lowe's has put a new technology center in here. They're bringing a lot of employees. Honeywell has moved their headquarters to Charlotte. Robinhood just announced they're taking additional space. And another recent announcements of new jobs would be USAA, who also has come to Charlotte. So those are some big jobs. And then the largest job employment that's coming to Charlotte, the state of North Carolina, is Centene, which is a large insurance provider, is going to bring 3,000 jobs, and they chose the university submarket, and they're going to build their own campus. So that just shows you that we've got continuing growth. A lot of people want to be here, and because of that, the velocity is really moving well. Everybody thinks, oh, there's a lot of office space out there. There is, but there's a lot of people filling it this time. So this is just a quick overview. If we can flip to the next slide, this gives you some background of where we're seeing trends. And then if we can go to the last slide, I know this might be very difficult to see, but we break these down for different submarkets. And there's about 10 or 11, 12 submarkets in each one of these. And if you could see on this chart, the university submarket is where we're focused on. And the nice thing about the university submarket, it's one of the lowest cost providers in the Charlotte area. So your board and your leadership's trying to stay in that area to be very diligent about the costs associated. And there's a lot of different options. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my partner Piers, talk a little bit about where we are currently. And Piers, we can't hear you.
Let me take it off mute. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for that. Thank you for having us here. Could you go to the next slide, please? So this is a location map that Geraldine touched on previously, but as mentioned, it shows your current location with the red star on David Taylor Drive and the 4 relocation options that we have narrowed it down to, all within about 2 miles as the crow flies from your current location. So keeping within close proximity to the current university location. Now, if you could jump down to the next slide, please. What we've done here is broken out each of these 4 potential relocation options, provided some more detail as we're working through the process. So obviously building address and a photo of it, and then I'll talk you through some of the stuff down the left-hand side just so that everyone understands the information on the page. So the rental rate here, these are all full service leases. What that means is that everything is included outside of your phone and internet. Free rent is a typical concession in our market that landlords offer to win new business, and is what they will offer upfront at the start of your lease term, where you're not going to pay rent to help with the costs of moving. The TIA is what's called the tenant improvement allowance, and that's a construction allowance, again, that the landlord is going to offer you as a concession to come to their building to help you with those costs of construction to build out the space as you need it. SF available is your square footage, and then a parking ratio is the number of spaces that will be allocated with the lease in each building. And amenities obviously speak for themselves. You could jump to the next slide, please. So this building is just down the road from that previous building we looked at. Both are under consideration. They have different availabilities. And each space has some different qualities that your local team felt were worth considering and wanted to keep on the table. You can jump to the next slide, please. This is option number 3. If you look at the right-hand side, this is an example test fit that we will subsequently do with each of these buildings to mark out your programming requirement to make sure that we can accommodate the number of desks that you need, offices, conference rooms, training room, etc. So we'll go through this process with a selected architect at each building and work with them to make sure that the space lays out, is functional for what you need, and also accommodates what you need. Next slide, please. This is option number 4, the final one. This is the only single-story building that we are considering, and again, within a stone's throw of the current building and another great reputable office park within the university submarket. Next slide, please. And I believe that's me.
Thank you, Piers and Keith. Appreciate you walking everyone through this option. So just wanted to talk a little bit about timeline and next steps. Obviously, we've gotten this far in the process, and there are a lot more detailed steps to come. The first of which is doing some more engagement with our staff. We'll be setting up a committee with representatives from each department to work with me and the management team. We'll go out and visit the sites. We'll be asking those staff members to represent their department's interests and give us feedback and identify issues and identify positive aspects of the qualities of these buildings as well as the locations. We're also in the process of doing a staff survey to get additional input from all the employees on some of their preferences. There are a lot of different location amenities and building amenities with these options that we didn't have time tonight to get into, but certainly getting a sense of what's top of mind of staff is important. Our next phase, working with Keith and Piers, is to really enter into some negotiations with these 4 spaces and our current location. We want to see if we can get the lease rate down. We want to see if we can get some more benefits and really think about our financial needs, what's going to work for us in the long term, and sort of the unique situation we have with Centralina being a kind of a quasi-government organization and how our finances need to work. So Denise Strauss, our finance director, is deeply involved with that, and that will be ongoing throughout the summer. What we're working towards is coming back to you in September at your September 8th meeting. We'll have a much longer presentation. We'll walk you through each of the options, the financials, and we'll propose a recommendation for the executive board's consideration and hopeful approval. So that will be the moment where we will truly understand if we're staying or if we're going and what the terms of that would be. And our deadline really is September 30th. At that moment, we have to give notice to our current landlord as to whether or not we're going to extend our current lease or if we're going to move to a new location. So following that, we will either prepare for renovations here or we will start packing and building out a new space for occupancy in 2022. So that's an overview of the process. I'm happy to, we'll obviously be keeping our board officers deeply engaged in the process over the summer. Be happy to answer any questions that the executive board might have or any suggestions that you have for us in this process. Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Geraldine. If you have any questions for Geraldine or Piers or Keith are still on the line, if you have any questions, I know they went through this their slides rather quickly. It's a lot of numbers, a lot of things to look at. But if anyone has any questions for Geraldine or our 2 consultants, please, now's your time.
I just have one.
Go ahead, Jay.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Sorry. I was just wondering if Geraldine and the some of the other staff have actually physically been to these places yet.
Yes, we went out, myself, Denise, and Venetia White, our HR and operations manager. We did a site tour of, I believe, 10 spaces that were available in our immediate area. And then we worked with Piers and Keith to narrow that down to the 4 that you have in front of you tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jay.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes. Bill Feather?
This is Bill Feather, yes. My question is just curiosity, nothing more. I know when we did this last time, we had considered a permanent location. Was that taken into consideration?
When you say permanent, you mean purchasing a building, or do you mean a lease term longer than 5 or 7 years?
Purchase was discussed at the last time we did this.
That's a great question. We did not think about that this time around. I don't think there are too many buildings in our university area that we could afford to purchase. That would require us looking outside of this market, and that would be another financial consideration to go down the purchasing route. But if the board wants us to look at that, we certainly can. It's just in the commercial real estate, it might be out of our price range. I don't know, Keith, if you have any thoughts on that.
Your purchasing is a good examples if there's going to be a long-term home forever. The nice thing about leasing space is you can ebb and flow depending on your needs. So this year we might be 12, you might grow with adding new members or new counties or reducing. You can always flux back and forth. And plus it's not the initial, all that money, all up costs up front on the financing. And then with the size range we're looking at right now, very single tenant buildings that size are very difficult to find. And if they are, they're pretty doggone expensive right now. But if that's something that the board would like us to educate, we can actually go through that exercise and see what's out there.
Any other comments regarding Mayor Feathers' suggestion or comments?
So just a question, Mr. Chairman. Keith, how many square feet do we have now?
You're currently in 16,693.
Okay, so from what I've seen, we're at down to 12 to 13,000 square feet with a conference room, maybe a common area, something like that. So maybe a lateral move or a little bit less. Is that right?
Correct.
So Geraldine, a question for you. COVID 16 months ago, people went home and people started working from home. Do you have any anticipation that some of these people may continue to telecommute and we make it work with less square feet? Or, you know, I'm staff here. Is this the square footage, you know, between 12 and 14,000 square feet? Is that what we need?
I feel quite confident it is what we need, despite probably a continued work from home arrangement for many of our staff. One of the consent items that you all approved tonight is a new policy on alternative work arrangements. So in that policy, at this point, we are not allowing for 100% remote work for any of our staff. We need to have people in the building, working in person and out in the region. So we don't need to accommodate for 100% remote. The amount of square footage that we're going down is quite significant. It's about 4,000 square feet, and we can preserve our training rooms and our conference rooms and our storage that we have right now. The workstations are smaller than our current configuration in our building, so that allows us some flexibility. But I think given our expectations of having staff coming into the office, working with meetings, hosting meetings with external folks, I think we still do need the amount of square foot that we have proposed in these buildings. I think anything smaller might start to get a little uncomfortable for our staff and difficult to manage when we've got external visitors coming into the space.
Thank you. All I need to know.
Any other questions or comments?
This is Commissioner Powell. I just have a couple comments. I agree with what Geraldine was saying, because the meetings are so important and the conference space is so important. And so the times that I've come to the current location, we've been in different rooms for meetings. And I think something that's really important to consider is availability of parking for all of us that are coming from different places. We can't ride our bikes there. And so availability of parking. And when I was looking at what the consultants had provided, it didn't look like a lot of parking. And proximity to sinks, if the conference room is near a sink or any kind of water source, we've had a problem with that. And proximity to restrooms is something to think about when we're coming in, because these conferences that we come to are so important. And so I'm just throwing it out there that these are things that, you want, most of all, you want staff to be happy in the space, but we also have to think about these meetings that are so important. And
thank you. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Powell brought up a good point in parking and the amenities the building may have, such as restrooms, just something simple like that, to keep that in mind. And plus, I want to add that, yes, us executive board, we guide this ship, but our executive director is the captain of the ship. So I would just ask that we and her key staff members, they're going to do all the work with the consultants who have heard. And I just ask that we let them do their work, and then when they come back to us in September, then we can delve into it. Because I know what we're going to have to look at big time are the numbers. How much per square foot? And look the square footage of wherever they decide. But I think it's key too for us as board members to do what Commissioner Powell did, and that's look at each one of these. We can Google Earth them or how you want to do it, and we can look at these a little more tighter than what we just see on this map on these pieces of paper and on our slides. So there's more work to do, but again, we got till September to do this. So I'm interested in Councilman Eggleston as a councilman from the city of Charlotte. I know this is his district. However, he may be familiar with this area and what the city of Charlotte's got going on, and does he have any input regarding this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on up there with the fact that we just opened the UNC Charlotte Marriott, which also has a convention component to it. Vice Chair Powell and I were actually there for a luncheon today. There's going to be academic conferences, all sorts of conferences that might have relevant subject matter to the work that we're doing here at Centralina. With Centene and the investment they're making up there, we're seeing a lot. I think the light rail and some other investments that have been made sparked and kind of created a snowball effect. And there is a great level of investment, I think, being close to the interstate and somewhat central in our region. Obviously, we want people to be able to, once we're back to having our board meetings in person, want people to be able to access wherever our office is. So I think it makes sense staying in that general area, because I think it's an area that's just going to continue to improve, and the amount of amenities are going to continue to increase. The transportation investments in that area are going to continue to increase. So I think it's a good place for us to be.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Shue, and I wanted to ask, how long have we been in the current location on David Taylor Drive now?
We signed a 5-year lease, and that lease will expire in March of 22.
Is that the only lease that we've ever had? So basically, we've only been there, this is concluding 5 years.
Correct.
All right. Is there anything about that building right now that I haven't heard that's non-functional or can't be renovated to meet what you need there? Because, you all know that moves cost money, and there's a lot involved in a move with an organization as big as this organization is. And, I mean, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but that's just my thoughts. I'm always on the conservative side. And, just like in Cabarrus County, I know that most of you probably know we're building a new courthouse, but we're also going to renovate the old courthouse to make it usable. Even though we've been in that building since 1975, we're still going to renovate that rather than tearing it down or totally move away. But that's just my thoughts. Maybe someone else may have something to say similar to that.
Commissioner, I appreciate you raising that point, because it allows me to clarify something that I don't think was entirely clear in our presentation. So our current office space has a lot of great benefits. It's very big and it's not terribly efficient. So I think that's going to be one of the areas that we'll ask the board to weigh. You know, the short-term cost of moving and upfitting a new space might be expensive in the first year, but the rent rates are going to go up regardless. And if we can't shrink the amount of square footage that we're renting in the long term, we might end up paying more for this space and be paying for space that we may not need. So that's part of the economic factors that we're going to be teasing out over the summer and doing our best to negotiate with each property and bringing the best deal that we can to you all and be looking to your guidance on how we want to proceed. And I'll just say I appreciate the chair's confidence in me and the team, but I recognize that you all are the decision makers when it comes to how we're going to proceed. So if there's anyone on the executive board that would like to be a part of the process, come visit the buildings, be more engaged in what we're doing in this process, I welcome that, and I encourage you to reach out to me because what I would hate to happen, given the timeline, is that we come back to you in September and there's a lot of questions and concerns, and we are obligated by our lease to provide that notice to them at the end of that month. So please feel free, informally or formally. I'll engage you in whatever way is going to enable you to make the best decision in September.
And as our executive director brings that point up, I'm just looking at the budget impact in our agenda cover sheet, and it says budget implications are still under development. So our finance director will work hard on this, whether it's just renovations here or whether it is a move. And I would ask that the finance department here at Centralina keep the board's finance committee involved. Those on the finance committee, and that'd be our treasurer, Councilman Morgan, and then they could keep the rest of us informed as to any these dollars we're talking about, the finances of what's going to happen here during this process. And Mr. Bell, I want to just mention something. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. I can go back as far as the Baxter Street, and that was tight quarters. Then they moved to Tryon Street on the 12th floor of that building, and it seemed that was too much square footage. Times I would go there, I saw a lot of empty area. And now we're here, and this area is better utilized than Tryon Street, but I think just reducing the footprint somewhat and utilizing the facility somewhat better may be the goal here in a relocation. Would that be a true statement?
Absolutely, and every deal and every situation is different. The deal in Tryon, I mean, that was Bank of America basically giving us space, giving us furniture. It was almost too good to turn down, and thanks to their generosity. And then obviously where we are was a very unique situation where it was an owner-occupied building, like you were speaking before, where a company bought a building and they shrunk, and they're like, we've got this extra space, what do we do? And we're cohabitating. So every deal is a little bit different, but we try to do the best for the board and for the money we're spending.
Thank you, sir.
And Geraldine, do you need us to stay on for the end, or are we relieved when we leave this section? You tell us.
Well, yes, we're done. Thank you, Keith. We appreciate you and Pierce being here.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much. And for the board, we're still open now. We're still open for some communication or conversation, or are we good? We wish to receive this as information. We will stay informed by Centralina, by Geraldine, by our finance committee. Are we good with that, or any further comments to be made?
I'd like to ask a question. This is Amelia Stinson-Wesley.
Yes.
It looks like that one of these locations is close to the light rail. I can't tell exactly how close it would be, but could someone from either the team that was doing the research or from Centralina staff speak to any advantages that we might have in being near that kind of mass transit?
Yeah, thank you for raising that point, and good observation on the maps. Kelly, can we go back to that location map just for reference for folks? So the fourth option, this one, University Executive Park, is indeed very proximate to the blue line. So it's number 4 on that map that you see on the screen. So it's probably maybe 3 blocks away from the station, which I think is going to be fantastic for our staff that might have to go into Uptown for meetings with the city of Charlotte. Hopefully with implementation of Connect Beyond, our regional mobility plan, sometime in the future, we could have added connectivity. It might also allow us to head north on the blue line to visit our friends in Cabarrus County. And then similarly facilitate folks from those transit-served areas come in for meetings at our office. So there is some benefit, and it's certainly part of our mission to facilitate transportation and mobility conversations. So we'd be living that through this location, which I think is appealing to staff. It's just a question if the price is right and the space is right.
Thank you for that question and comment regarding that. Very observant. Okay, again, as I said, to receive this information.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Larkin Eggleston,
Yes,
one thing that that Ms. Stinson Wesley, I think that is an astute observation, and I would say too that, and our team staff-wise can speak to this better, but the other thing it makes us more proximate to is hotels. I don't know how frequently we have folks coming in and spending the night for meetings or conferences or whatever it is that we're doing, but that location, in addition to being proximate to transit, which is big of a part of the work that this organization does, with such a big part of that being transit, I do think that's a relevant thing for us to consider as a feather in the cap of that location, but it also, for both board, for staff, for visitors, puts people closer to a lot of the hotels, a lot of the restaurants, a lot of the services and amenities that area provides, more so than being deep in an office park.
Thank you, Councilman. And again, I wanted to hear, we've heard from Commissioner Powell, Mecklenburg, and Councilman Eggleston from Charlotte. This is their home area, Mecklenburg County and City of Charlotte. So I'm glad to get their opinions on this matter. Thank you.
I have, Mr. Chairman, never been one to get in front of Councilmember Eggleston, but he echoed exactly what I was thinking, and that's fantastic. That's a great idea.
Thank you, Councilman Morgan. Any other comments? Thank you, Keith and Pierce, for joining us. I think we'll leave it to our executive director and staff and those involved. As our executive director stated, they'll want to be involved in this process deeper than what just talking about it. Please let us know, let her know, and then you'll be right involved with any tours or further conversation regarding this. And again, I think the numbers will be a key part of this, how much per square footage and the amount of lease and so on. So thank you so much. Thank you, gentlemen. With that concluded, we will move to item 7. And as always, Leslie Mazingo is on the line for our federal relations update. Mrs. Mazingo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. So as usual, you have a performance report that should be included in your packet. And I always just make the assumption that you've had a chance to look that over. Happy to answer any questions about that, should you have any. So if you do, please raise your hand or put something in the chat to call to our attention. I'm actually going to use the allocated time this evening to cover a couple of big issues that are going on in Washington that I wanted to bring to your attention. So first and foremost, wanted to let you know that we, thanks to Michelle Nance and her very quick response as the director of the planning department, we were able to submit an official earmark request through Senator Tillis's office for the regional ITS plan. So that is in the works. There's a long way for that process to go for us to be able to know whether or not we're going to get the funding. But you can't be considered for the funding if you don't get your request in on time. So we were able to do so with Michelle's help, and so that has been submitted to the Senate side. And that's under the regular appropriations process. So as many of you may know, the president did submit his budget to Congress on May 28th. And this is the first time in 10 years that there is a that there is a budget without any kind of budget caps. So it really provided a lot of luxury to the president, for a president for the first time in 10 years to not have to, worry about, where to make those cuts to live within the budget agreement of the past. So with that, the FY22 proposed budget actually doesn't have any cuts that I'm aware of. It provides a 16%, proposes again, a 16% increase in non-defense discretionary spending. And it also provides for additional increase in discretionary spending, but at a smaller scale, for a total over 10 years of $6 trillion. Again, that's over 10 years, and then 1.8 trillion deficit, and another 1.3 trillion that would occur in corporate and personal or income tax increases on the highest levels of individuals, and then some corporate rates. So typically, historically speaking, when the president's budget reaches Capitol Hill, I would say to folks, don't worry too much about what's in there, because once Congress gets a hold of it and goes through their process, it can look very different. I do think that we're in a different area with this particular budget, because there's a lot of things in there that indicate the president's direction. So, for example, as I've mentioned before, there's a lot to do with racial and social equity, as well as climate change and sustainability issues. And I do think that Capitol Hill, being under the same majority or under the same party as the president on both sides, House and Senate, you're going to see that they're going to work a little bit harder to adopt as much of the president's budget as they can to reflect the same goals. And so what we're seeing is that everything that was in the president's budget is being is also being carried out in other legislation, and also with current grants. So if you are in the process, and I hope you are, of pursuing the regular grants process and the notices that we put out twice a month, you will see that they're already weaving in those issues. Again, a lot of focus on racial issues, racial and social equity issues, and climate change and sustainability. So you're going to want to keep that in mind with just about anything that you do. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, I'm going to give you very, very quick updates. I'm going to try to keep it fast, but there's a lot of information I wanted to share. So as part of the president's budget, what's also included in that are the other two parts of his economic agenda for the recovery. And the first part of that was the American Rescue Plan, which everyone is very familiar with at this point, and which provided a lot of wonderful dollars allocated directly to local governments over a certain size. And then, of course, all governments received some level of funding, and the direct allocations that went to those above 50,000 at the city level, and the rest coming through the state. So a lot of folks have already started to see those dollars come in. And as we know, that's a roughly $2 trillion package. The other piece of that, one of the second pieces, is the American Jobs Plan. That's another $2 trillion to create an infrastructure package. And that is actually what's going on most aggressively on Capitol Hill right now, is going through the infrastructure bill. And what's carrying that is what's known as the Surface Transportation Reauthorization. That has to be done by the end of September. It was supposed to be done last September. It was postponed for a year, so now it's under this September. And so what they're trying to do is attach this larger full infrastructure package to that legislation that must be done. And as part of those negotiations, the president started off with 2.3 trillion. It's been reduced to 1.7 trillion that he's willing to negotiate down to. But the highest that Senate Republicans at this point, who are the chief negotiators, they have a current draft out for about 928 billion. So as you can see, they still have a ways to go. They're still pretty far off in terms of what they're what they're doing. So as part of the infrastructure negotiations, what I can tell you is there are three big points that are really kind of holding things up, if you will, in terms of getting these negotiations to come together. And the big one, the first one being, how do you define infrastructure? So a surface transportation reauthorization bill typically has roads, bridges, transit, things of that nature. And they've started adding in other things such as water infrastructure. I think that's got bipartisan support. They're adding in broadband. That definitely has bipartisan support. I've heard Senator Tillis specifically say he's very happy to see that counted as infrastructure. I think COVID-19 has taught everybody a lesson about, our lack in broadband. And then we also have a number of other things that they're looking to add in, and that has included, affordable housing, again, sustainability or energy efficiency projects, and even going broader into hospitals and nursing homes and elementary schools. So there's a number of things that they're trying to call infrastructure. That's creating some heartburn for folks. The broader the category, in addition to that, the broader the category, the more expensive it is. So as I just mentioned, they're billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars apart. So they've got to find a way to come together on that. And then the third piece is how to pay for it. As I mentioned, the president has proposed a number of changes to the tax code that would help pay for those items. And that's pretty much a non-starter with a lot of the Senate Republicans. So they've got some negotiations to do there. The reality is the president's trying very hard to get a bipartisan bill together that everyone supports. But if they cannot come to some sort of agreement fairly soon, they will move on, and they will do it through the reconciliation package. They've gotten some permission to do that. So they have the ability to pass this legislation without Republican support if necessary. Senate Majority Leader Schumer has already said that he really wants to complete the infrastructure piece of this three-part plan by August recess. So that's quickly coming up. They are currently in session for 3 weeks between the Memorial Day recess, where they just returned, until the July 4th recess. So they've got 3 weeks. And then after July 4th, they'll do another 3-week sprint until they get to the August recess. And then they're out all of August. So they've got these 2 sessions of about 3 weeks to get these things done. The infrastructure package is something everybody wants to get done. And again, I think water infrastructure is likely to be part of it. I think broadband is likely to be part of it. But there's also a lot of momentum and calls for funds for high-speed rail and a heavy push for additional funds for greenways, bike pedestrian trails, things of that nature. And then if they're able to get past the infrastructure piece of it, then the third part of the president's economic agenda, some call it part of the Build Back Better, some refer to it as the relief, recovery, rebuild from COVID-19. The third part would then be the Americans Family Plan. And that is the human element that includes free childcare, universal pre-K, and a number of other things in terms of investing in people. I won't go into a lot of that now because I think we're a little bit ways off from getting to that point. We've got to get infrastructure done first. So you've probably all seen and heard the heavy emphasis on infrastructure. We're following that very closely in terms of our priorities regionally and hoping to see the programs that will best benefit this region. But I'm feeling confident that one way or the other, we will see that infrastructure package make it through. So with that, again, those are, sorry, I wanted to also say on the American Rescue Plan, the thing that I want to make sure everybody is doing is please keep a very close eye on those frequently asked questions from Treasury, because we have seen an update again. We've seen an update in the last couple of weeks. I think there was one last week that dealt with the smaller communities and what states needed to be doing. And then we had another update just released yesterday. And that, my understanding is, I haven't had a chance to go through them to do a side-by-side. I'm actually out of the office this week. So I haven't had a chance to do the side-by-side. But my understanding is the Treasury Department's focus on the most recent update to the FAQs is a heavy focus on questions that have been coming from municipalities. So that might be worth taking a look at those. And so with that, I will stop and answer questions about either the Washington portion of the update or, as I said at the beginning, Mr. Chairman, the performance report, if anybody has any questions about that.
Thank you, Ms. Mazingo. Any questions for our consultant? That was a lot of information. So
I
any
know.
questions for Leslie? Yeah, wow.
I know,
knew
I'm
you
sorry.
That's all right,
There's
Leslie.
so-
On our agenda, it says you have 15 minutes. And I was going to tell you before I started, I said, take as long as you need, because you usually have a huge amount of information for us. So that's okay.
Well,
You really do talk. You do talk fast.
I
But a lot of
do.
information. That's okay, though. That's okay. On page 59 in my agenda pack, I don't know if that's what y'all have or not, is the goals and activities. That's their May 21 report and things that she reported on. Any questions for Leslie while she's on the line? I know William Morgan has something for her.
And so do I.
Really? No. She covered. Thank you very much, Leslie. I appreciate it. Enjoy the beach.
Thank you, sir.
This is Commissioner Powell from Mecklenburg County. Hello,
Yes,
Leslie.
ma'am.
Yes, Commissioner
Hey,
Powell.
nice
Yes,
to
ma'am.
see you.
Good to see you, and thank you for all your good work. And maybe you need to email the answer, I'm not sure, but I'm very interested in the infrastructure, especially related to stormwater management and water.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Greenways.
Okay.
In my region, in North Mecklenburg, but for the entire county and the entire Centralina region, really. But when you said you hope it gets in, I want to help it get in. So whatever I can do to help, and I need some more knowledge and background on what they're considering, because we have shovel-ready projects ready to go for stream enhancements and stream restoration. And so however I can help. Unless
Okay.
if there's anything you want to tell me now.
Well, the one thing I can say, just, right off the cuff, is that weighing in with your members of Congress. So letting Congresswoman Adams know, in particular, since she serves on the majority and will have the ear, of the chairman for these pieces of legislation, but and also the two senators. So letting them know your particular interest in making sure that those items stick is a good idea, especially in the areas of greenways, because I feel fairly certain that stormwater is going to make it through, because there's just the only thing that could catch that up is that there was a lot of stormwater money put into ARP, but they still have a strong interest, and they're getting a lot of feedback from local governments about just how much of a need that there is in terms of the America's crumbling water infrastructure. So I think that, talking about how that would impact and how that would help improve the quality of life for the residents of Mecklenburg County is a really good idea to pass along to them, that you would like to see that. And I have actually heard, and I think that you'll know this actually from your previous roles, my understanding is Senator Tillis also served in a Parks and Rec capacity in his years as a commissioner, and so he actually is supportive of the idea of expanded greenway systems, and so I think weighing in and give him that coverage is a good idea. In the meantime, I'm happy to pull. There's a lot of different moving bills right now, and so not knowing exactly what's in each of those proposals, I'll need some time to pull some of that information together for you. But I'm happy to do so and get that over to you.
Thank you. And I'm ready. Like, I can advocate any day of the week on this, because not only are greenways nice amenities to have, but they're very important, and they play an important role in stormwater management, in water quality and water supply. And so I will call all of them. Thank you.
Well, and like I said, I think them knowing that you have that support is a good idea. But I will also tell you, given the position of the House Chairman, DeFazio, and just in general, the fact that those in charge of this legislation, as it makes its way through, having such a heavy emphasis on park and pedestrian bicycle and pedestrian pass and greenway systems, I think that the momentum is there, and I think that the people in charge are the ones that that want to see it happen, and we'll make sure that it stays in. But it never hurts to reinforce that from the local level.
Thank you very much for your work. You guys, I just want everyone to know she's fierce when up in Washington. Like I was with her when I was a park commissioner, and so thank you.
And I don't talk as fast, but I walk really fast when I'm in Washington. I have more than 15 minutes.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Powell, you brought up a good point. Mecklenburg has an excellent stormwater program, as you know, because I met you in one of those workshops, and I try to attend those every year. So it's a great workshop, and so I'm always trying to stay up to date on stormwater, such as you. So thank you, and Leslie, thank you. Any further questions before we move on?
I'd like to make a statement. I've got to get together with the Mecklenburg group. I was Park and Rec chairman 30 years ago when we first put in the first few pieces of the Greenway. So I would love to chat with you guys for a little bit. Now I live in Lincolnton, very happily here, but I'd really like to touch bases with you guys, and you can tell me everything you've done.
Thank you, Ms. Poinstead. Commissioner Powell will be more than happy to get with you.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I knew you would. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Before Leslie signs off or whatever she's going to do, any further questions for her? Everyone knows how to get in touch with her. Information's available to get in touch with Leslie. Any questions? Because she talks fast, so please email her or call her, and to go through this again or whatever you need from her. Leslie, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. And I don't know, but I think you have to approve the performance report. Just didn't want that to fall off your radar.
That's right. I was just so blown away with. Yeah, I was blown away from Leslie and Elaine's comments. I was engrossed in that. I got swallowed up in that. You're right. Hang on a minute. Let me get my notes here. Okay. I need a motion to approve the Strategic Consulting Performance Report for May 2021.
You have that motion from me.
And this is Jarvis, I'll second.
Okay, I've got Councilman Morgan and Woodburn as a motion and a second. I'll now ask our clerk, Kelly Weston, to call the roll. Those in favor, please say yes. Those opposed, answer no. Kelly Weston.
Karen Alexander. Peter Ashuto.
Yes.
Dolores Chambers.
Yes.
Bobby Compton.
Yes.
Kathy Davis.
Yes.
Larkin Eggleston.
Yes.
Bill Feather.
Yes.
Corinthia Lewis Lemon. Jay McCosh.
Yes.
William Morgan.
Yes.
Christine Poinsett.
Yes.
Elaine Powell.
Yes.
Lynn Shu.
Yes.
Amelia Stinson Wesley.
Yes.
David Williams.
Yes.
And Jarvis Woodburn.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, that was unanimous.
Thank you. The motion passes. Thank you, Kelly. We'll move on to our last agenda item. Item number 8 is the FY22 work plan approval. We'll now recognize our executive director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so I know we're a little behind schedule, but this is a really important item. So I just want to walk you all through a few slides to give you an overview of what our team has put forward for our core activities in the coming fiscal year. Kelly, you can go on to the next slide. So just as a brief reminder, fiscal year 22 is the final year of the 3-year strategic plan that we had crafted and the board approved when I first started the organization. over 2 years now at this point. Our focus over the last 2 years and through this next coming fiscal year is really to implement priorities that were previously identified in Centralina's regional framework documents, including Connect Our Future, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, Prosperity for Greater Charlotte, our Regional Freight Mobility Plan, our Annual Aging, our Region F Plan, as well as our Workforce Development Board priorities. So the work plan and the 7 strategic goals that we've been making progress on for the past several years really reflect the items left on that regional agenda from those previous processes. What's new moving forward for the coming year ahead is a new goal number 8 that we've added that will update some of those key framework documents, including a required update to a new 5-year comprehensive economic development strategy, and also preparing our organization and the board for a new 3-year strategic plan. So it's our opportunity this coming fiscal year to think big, to refresh our region's priorities, and to think about what is going to guide the growth and prosperity of our region for the next several years. So I'm really excited about the prospect of working closely with the board to do that, and part of your motion in front of you this evening is to approve a new subcommittee of the board that would work alongside of me and our staff group on these important activities this coming fiscal year. Just a quick comparison to last year's fiscal year work plan, we have a few less tactics, but it's a pretty rich document in terms of what we're going to be focusing on. 29 strategies across 8 goals with 138 action items. And as you all know, we report out quarterly on our progress towards the tactics in the work plan. Next slide. As in previous years, we did stakeholder engagement with the board, with our members, the regional managers group, and this year we added a regional planners meeting to the engagement. Just want to briefly recap some of the input we received and how that's informed the work plan. The graphic on the right really represents how we're trying to balance the factors that we have in shaping these inputs. So what's aligned with our strategic goals, what input responds to kind of the emerging conditions that we're facing in that year, this year being COVID recovery, where the departments want to innovate and move their agendas forward, and then of course the needs of our member governments. So you can see some feedback here that we received, and out of our 7 goals, the top 2 were economic development and growth. You can see a list here of what our local governments shared with us in terms of their needs, and all of these bullets that you see listed here find their way into the work plan in some form or another. Next slide. Oops, other way, Kelly. Thanks. We also asked the question, what were the top activities for regional collaboration in the survey? The top 2 items, implementing Connect Beyond and updating our SEDS, are already planned. Those are things that we have every intention of doing, and there's been a lot of energy already spent on thinking about Connect Beyond and will be spent on preparing for the SEDS planning process in this year. The third bullet was really great to get this feedback from all of you. These are the topics that you've listed up and identified that we need to spend some time talking about and understanding where our region is headed on these issues. So broadband, water infrastructure, cybersecurity, and housing were 4 issues that were listed up as topics for regional dialogue, and these will be among the topics that we explore as we're preparing for our strategic plan. So if you're interested in these issues, this is a little bit of a plug for that committee that the chairman's going to talk about in a moment. We'd love to have your engagement in scoping out what we might need to do as a region on these issues in the years to come. Next slide. So I'm not going to take you through the whole plan. I hope you had the opportunity to read it. It's organized by the 8 goals and their corresponding strategies and tactics. I'll just note that these get incorporated into the performance planning process for staff. They're part of my performance plan. They're part of my director's performance plan, and they trickle down to staff as well. So we're very much about implementing this plan and spending our resources in implementing this as well. I'm just going to hit on a few highlights that are organized by our levels of impact. So in thinking about our regional collaboration goals, you can see here some of the highlighted tactics. The first 2 bullets are organizing and preparing for a new strategic plan and updating the SEDS. These are organization-wide efforts. It's kind of an all-hands-to-the-mast type of situation that I'm looking for participation across all of our departments, as well as active engagement for the board. One thing to keep in mind, although the SEDS is technically a comprehensive economic development strategy, it is absolutely vital as part of that strategy that we're addressing infrastructure, that we're addressing quality of life, and all of the factors that make our region a competitive place for people to want to move companies and work here. So it is very holistic in the topics that are addressed in that plan. And that's one of the reasons why it's a great opportunity to use that planning process to refresh our regional priorities. I just want to draw your attention to the last 2 bullets that's shown on the slide here. These will be activities led by our regional planning department that will help us continue to shape how we manage growth across the region. So it's exciting to see these projects in the work plan, and I know Michelle and her team will be bringing forward more information to all of you about these projects and how they'll be implemented. Next slide. Our second level of impact is how we're supporting our local governments. So you'll see here some tactics that reflect our member needs and speak to the needs of our local governments as they have been expressed to us. Just want to hit on a couple of highlights here. That first bullet, American Rescue Plan support. We've made great progress as a state association of councils of governments that I hope the board is proud of. We are working together across 16 regional councils to collaborate with the North Carolina Pandemic Recovery Office. And for the first time in quite a long time, the governor has actually put in his spend plan for American Rescue Plan funds at the state level a direct appropriation to councils of governments to support our capacity in assisting local governments in the spending of these funds. That can be grant writing capacity, it can be technical assistance, it could be even administering some of these funds on behalf of local governments. So this is really exciting, and we hope that the General Assembly will see the value of investing in the COG system, and it will make its way into the final bill. Regardless, we're going to help you because we need to, and it's really important that we're spending these resources in an impactful way across the region. 2 other bullets I just wanted to note here. I've added some member recruitment strategies into the work plan. It's a special effort of ours to get our smaller communities back as members of COG. And we will continue to work and connect with our colleagues in Rowan County, and I hope some of our board members will help me in that effort of connecting to their leadership and bringing them back into Centralina. And then lastly, data and mapping, especially with the census information coming out, is an incredibly powerful tool that we can deploy to help you make better decisions in your communities. So we're going to be focusing some efforts on that this year as well. And last but not least, it looks like our workforce and aging departments, next slide, Kelly. They make up our innovative service delivery. Both of those teams have been doing incredible work during COVID to respond and adapt to delivering those services. now we're looking at making some of those changes more long-term and permanent. So a couple of exciting things happening here with our aging department being tapped to develop a strategic plan for helping older adults connect to vaccines. We're doing a focused outreach with our marginalized older adults to make sure they understand the services that are available through Centralina. And David and his team has had fantastic success moving career fairs into the virtual format. So they'll be continuing to expand and adapt their facilities to promote remote service delivery. And the last thing I'll just highlight is internal operations. On the next slide, we're due for a paying class study as an organization this fiscal year. Cybersecurity is definitely on our mind, so we have that in the work plan, in addition to the office space that you heard about tonight. So lots to do, a fantastic team to get it done. Our directors are on the line if folks have questions, but we look forward to really partnering with the board through the subcommittee and continuing to update you and get you engaged in these activities as we start the fiscal year.
Thank you, Geraldine. Any questions regarding what she covered? If you followed along on your computer screen, or this was sent to you by Kelly in case you printed it off, it's really worth printing off and saving to refer back to. The leading regional coordination, supporting local governments, innovative service delivery, and Centralina operations. Several bullet points on those 4 subjects. Any questions regarding any of that before I close up this particular agenda item with some comments? And again, I think she said staff has tuned in with us, so some Centralina staff have joined us. Aging staff, I guess David Hollers is on the line also with this North Carolina Works. Any questions, comments? You know, and plus, I will say this I got the work plan booklet right here that was here at the office, and anytime you're by here, or is it online? It's also online. The book that she had a picture of it when she started talking, to go through that, and then that in turn works within what she just went over. So I think this is a great thing to study, to work on as we move forward with this. My comments regarding this as chair are: the Centralina bylaws allow the chair to establish ad hoc advisory committee at their discretion and appoint members to those committees. Although the executive board approval is not required to establish such committees, I want to bring this before the board for a vote for your awareness and consent. Although the executive board and the full board of delegates will be involved throughout the strategic planning process, the committee will provide guidance on the plan development and facilitate engagement by other delegates, member governments, and regional stakeholders. Specific responsibilities of the committee include attending events and meetings related to strategic plan effort, facilitating invitations to key stakeholders and encouraging involvement, engaging with other delegates to obtain feedback on emergency goals and recommendations, and lastly, providing feedback to staff on emerging goals and recommendations. The committee will convene in September following appointments made by the chair, which will be in July and August, and will meet until February of 2022. I hope the executive board accepts my recommendation to establish a regional priority subcommittee to work with our executive director and staff on the next strategic plan. Any comments or questions for me or Geraldine regarding this? More conversation and action to take place before July and August, obviously, before we get deeper into this. If anybody has any questions, here we are, along with the Centralina staff.
I think they like the plan.
Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the FY22 Centralina Regional Council Work Plan and establish a new subcommittee of the Board of Delegates to guide strategic planning FY22.
So moved. Bill Feather.
Lynn Shu,
Thank
second.
you. Thank you, Commissioner Shu. I have a motion and a second. I'll now ask the clerk to call the roll. Those in favor to approve will answer yes. Those opposed will answer no. Kelly Weston.
Karen Alexander. Peter Ashuto.
Yes.
Dolores Chambers.
Yes.
Bobby Compton.
Yes.
Kathy Davis.
Yes.
Larkin Eggleston. Bill Feather.
Yes.
Corinthia Lewis Lemon.
Yes.
Jay McCosh.
Yes.
William Morgan. Christine Poinsett.
Yes.
Elaine Powell.
Yes.
Lynn Shu.
Yes.
Amelia Stimson Wesley.
Yes.
David Williams.
Yes.
Jarvis Woodburn.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, that did pass.
Thank you. The motion passes. Thank you, Kelly. Now for our closing comments. We're 2 minutes overtime here, so we'll get straight to comments from the executive board and Centralina staff. Board members, you're on the line. If you have any comments or questions for us, now's your time, or the Centralina staff that are still with us. Hearing none, comments from the executive director.
I just would like to introduce our newest employee, Christina Danis, to the board. Christina joins us as the Assistant Director for Community Economic Development. She is a PhD in public administration. She has a deep background in regionalism and community development, and we're delighted to have her at Centralina. And Christina, if you're on the line and want to show us your on video, say hello. Just want to welcome you to the executive board.
Welcome, Christina. There you are. Okay, very good. Now, for my comments, I'll close this out. I'll be brief. Please save the date for the next Board of Delegates meeting on Wednesday, August 11th at 5 o'clock. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say we're going to meet in person. Yes, we will meet in person. No more of trying to look at you on TV or anything like that.
They'll have the option.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It's going to be a hybrid, I think we call it. Call it a hybrid. You can call in or Zoom in, or you can show up and we'll look at each other face to face. August 11th, 5 o'clock, right here. And now I want to go back to item 6. If you can, on your computer, save that information for future use. We'll be talking about it again in a couple months, in September. And so I print it out and save it or whatever, because you'll need to refer back to that as we talk about what we're going to do with future office space here at Centralina. And then lastly, some of you have called in while on vacation, and I want to thank you very, very much. What a commitment from this board and staff and whoever else has called in or tuned in to call in on your vacation or on your personal time to join us, especially Jay McCosh, who's in Hawaii, of all places. The next Magnum PI, Jay McCosh in Hawaii. So thank you so much. With that, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, later. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone.